Welcome to Epithets, exploring the sacred titles of Hekate.
And we're back, finally. Hey, everyone. We're going to be finally finishing up our triplicity of Resh Gagal, Actiophes, and Neboutosoualeth with Neboutosoualeth. And if you don't know already, you're here with your host. I'm Isaac Fars, and I'm here with Robin Silverman. And Robin is going to start off with exploring what the name means. At least she usually does. But Robin, how was your search with Nebetosola?
Well, Neboutosoualeth, we have no idea what this word means, or if it even means anything at all. There's not very much. There is speculation from Dance, who's the guy who compiled the Greek magical papyri, that it's from the Sumerian god named Nebo. And I don't know if I buy that, but it sure is interesting. So, Isaac, how about you tell us a little bit about Nebo?
Well, Nebo was actually mentioned in the Bible by Isaiah. Uh, you obviously Isaiah wasn't a fan of him, but he was a Babylonian god who was a god of writing, and he was a god of vegetation. His symbols were the clay tablet and the stylus, and he had a very mercurial thing going for him with that. He he kind of became a less major god as time went on, but at the beginning of his, you know, of his rise to fame in Babylon, he was quite the big deal. So it's really interesting that that's an interesting connection. And so it was n- sorry, it was Nebu or Nabu, and that's what I have for that Mesopotamian god right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
He's
we
like
were
the
looking
Mesopotamian Hermes, basically. He's the
right.
yeah. I think they even associated him with the planet Mercury.
I saw that from a few different sources, but
Yeah,
it seemed like it was a pretty good conjecture.
yeah.
When trying to find Nabatasoleth in the PGM, I found 13 different spells. Robin, I don't know if you found any other ones that I may have missed in my search, but I can kind of go through them very quickly. Some of them, Nabatasoleth is just mentioned on its own, where others it is mentioned with Actiophes and Ereshkigal, or some kind of version of that. We talked a little bit about how some of these we definitely have kind of a game of telephone happening here where the pronunciation gets changed or maybe a few words get switched out because the people who are using these words might not know what they mean themselves.
Mhm.
The first place that I found it in the PGM was PGM 3, 1 through 164. It was a curse calling down the cat face Helios. It doesn't end well for a cat. Uh, it is calling on Hermes, Hekate, and Hermicadoleth. There is PGM 4, 296 to 466. It's a it's one of those crappy love spells using multiple power names. PGM 4, 1390 to 1495. It's another love spell calling on the help of heroes or gladiators or those who have died a violent death, which is a really interesting
Like the
group of
cat. I thought that
ghosts.
was interesting. The violent death, like in the first one, the cat spell. The cat actually dies a violent death. S-
Right.
Yeah, that just struck me as an interesting parallel.
That's interesting. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know. Yeah, there's all these different, calling on the Moray, the Fates, the Erinyes, Kore, and then Hecate. Ereshkigal was also mentioned. My favorite epithet, which we have yet to cover, Borbaforba, was mentioned. Not, it was translated in the text when I was reading it, but I recognized it. Like, oh, that's good. That should be Borbaforba in Greek. Um, Also chthonic Hermes and chthonic Acheron, which is interesting to be calling on.
Yeah, yeah, like what other
Acheron,
Acheron is there?
right.
But yeah, that one with all the different chthonic um deities. Yeah, that one was that was cool, that whole list of chthonic things that they're being called on.
Yeah, that one was intense for sure. This one was really interesting. PGM 4 to 2145 to 2240. It was this multi-use spell that then broke down to these little mini spells that you tack on
Yeah,
for specific purposes.
like the Swiss Army knife
And
spell. Like you can use
yeah,
this one, you can
yeah.
use this one. Yeah,
And the one that uses Neboutosoualeth specifically is a chariot wrecking spell,
yes.
which, you read and you're like, what does this have to do with Neboutosoualeth?
Yeah,
I
there's
guess
a
that's kind
couple of
of
these. There are a couple of these
Hermes.
that are about chariots, and I actually saw something, which I have no idea is even a thing, but especially mentioning the chariots in the cat spell, Neboutosoualeth is called on as Orobastria Neboutosoualeth.
Hmm.
And so I tried to figure out what Orobastria was, and I couldn't really. But one of the things I did find is there's actually a Solomonic demon called Orobas. And
Huh.
Orobas is in the form of a horse. He is, in fact, a patron of horses. He answers questions, gives power and control over others, protects one from the persecution of evil spirits, puts a stop to slander and gossip, can foretell the future, appears as a black stallion bucking up with lightning. So I like have no idea if this is even a thing, but finding this sort of horse demon with Orobas, Orobastria, and Neboutosoualeth, like, oh, that's neat. Um,
Yeah. Huh. I mean, this is especially interesting, assuming that, well, Hecate is not mentioned in this specific spell, the multi-use
mhm,
spell. Uh, that does kind of connect to it. Hecate uh, has sorry, traditional horse imagery.
mhm.
Uh, the other things that tied it to Hecate in that spell was the use of garlic and snakeskin
Yep.
in the chariot wrecking spell. Um, I don't know. Maybe that's connected to her as an Edea, goddess of the
Mhm.
roads. That's
Well, the chariots in this case, I think, would have been chariot races. I
oh
think this is
yeah.
when you're betting on the races and you want to make sure, you want to curse the other guy so that your guy wins. I think it's more
If you're
in
worried
that
that you just can't
context
take
than
it.
like interfering with traveling. I think it's
Hmm.
more about betting on the races.
Well, yeah. Weird. Ooh, PGM 4, 2241 to 2358. That's the document to the waning moon.
Which is
We
so
have
cool.
covered that. We have covered that ad nauseum, so I'm
Yeah.
just going to skip right over that. PGM 4, 2622 to 2707, a slander spell to Selene, which, excuse me, which quote, which works for everything and every rite, for it attracts in the same hour, it sends dreams, it causes sickness, produces visions, removes enemies when you reverse the spell, however you wish. But above all, be protected by a protected charm and do not approach the procedure carelessly, or else the goddess is angry. Uh, so this one was specifically, it seemed this protection part specifically was to Hecate. It also mentions Actio Fis, Mistress Selene, which makes, kind of makes you think about the Actio Fis moon connection. And then one of the lines I grabbed from there was, only ruler of the fortune of gods and daemons, Neboutosoualeth, Io, which I didn't know if that played in any way or would give us a hint.
Mm.
But anyway, PGM 4, 2708 to 84, another love spell of attraction. And it specifically calls on Hecate and the three names Actio Fisoreshkigal Neboutosoualeth. PGM 42891 to 2942, another love spell offering to the star of Aphrodite. Again, all three are used in here. PGM 459 to 89, it loosens shackles, makes invisible, sends dreams. It is a spell for gaining favor. And I included it because it was just Nebouth.
Yeah, it was
Nebout.
like
It
a
wasn't
weird spelling.
Neboutosoualeth.
Yeah, but it was like it. Yeah, I know the one you mean.
And it the farther we go into these, the weirder some of the spelling gets. Like the
Yeah.
next one that I have, PGM 737 317 to 18, is a phylactery to the moon, and it has active act active fifth instead of actiophis, act fifth Ereshkigal Neboutosoualeth, which is, clearly a callback to those three names, but either they just didn't know what they were writing, or they were maybe messy when writing that specific spell, or I don't know what. But
Yeah. Some of this, I wonder
uh,
how much is this like a handwriting issue
right, right, right.
or a spelling
Uh,
issue.
it could be all these things, or they just got it wrong.
Yeah.
PDM 14 675 to 94 is a spell to cause evil sleep, and
Is
that
that the donkey one? That's the donkey one, right?
I believe so. I'd have to
Yeah.
double check, but that does call in all three.
Yeah.
And then there's two more. There's a love spell, and then a sending a dream, which both mention
Mhm.
Neboutosoualeth. And those are the spells that I found that use this name.
Yeah. I noticed that the love spells tend to use the triple formula.
Hmm.
And the ones that don't tend to be about things like dreams and visions. I don't think the chariot spells really fit into either of those categories, but it seems like the triple formula gets used the most with the love spells. It's like in all the love spells, like we have all these love spells with the triple formula. Um, and I think that that triple formula like is kind of its own thing, where you use
Hmm.
these three things together, you're making this whole incantation where the dream ones or the vision ones or even the chariot ones use Neboutosoualeth on their own a little more. And in the donkey spell, the PDM 675, I'm calling it the donkey spell because he includes like a beheaded donkey. That actually says the name twice.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me see if I find where that is. It's like twice in the spell. PDM. Here we go. Yes, it calls on Typhon Seth. I command your prophetic powers because I call upon your authoritative name to which you cannot refuse to listen. Eo Erbeth, Eo Pakarbeth, Eo Bokolseth, Eo Pathathnax, Eo Soro, Eo Neboutosoualeth, Actiofi, Erish Kigal, Neboutosoualeth, and then a really long barber's name, which I'm not going to say. Come to me and go and strike down him. And this is calling on Typhon. And the Neboutosoualeth is used twice in that long incantation there. Again, I don't really know what to make of all this, frankly. This one is kind of a head scratcher. And I think I want to talk a little bit, since I just read a whole string of barbarous names, about the idea of the barbarous name itself and
Hmm.
kind of why we don't really know what they mean. Because we see these, of course, all through the PGM. These words that we don't know what they mean, or they don't seem to mean anything, or they're incredible tongue twisters to pronounce. Okay, I'm gonna give it a try. The long one that I skipped over when I was reading the donkey spell, I'm gonna give it a shot.
I just closed
Averamento
that.
ulere thecanax ethreluthenema reba emina. There we go.
Well
That's not a
done, well
word.
done.
That's a bunch of letters, right? But we have these all through the PGM, so they're clearly really important. And one of the things that important about them doesn't necessarily seem to be what they mean, but really what they say. And I found Iamblichus wrote a little bit about this, and Iamblichus was a Neoplatonist from 4th century CE. One of the more important Neoplatonists, and also one of the more mystically minded Neoplatonists. He's also, I have to say, my favorite Neoplatonist.
Hmm.
But Iamblichus, I've got a good little quote here about Iamblichus about the names. But you ask why, among our symbolical terms, we prefer barbarous words to our respective native tongues. I want to stop here. The word barbarous here simply refers to language that isn't Greek, right? The barbarians are people who don't speak Greek. So when we call them barbarous, we're not really making any kind of value judgment. We're just saying they're not Greek. Why among our symbolical terms we prefer barbarous words to our respective native tongue? There is also for this a mystic reason. For it was the gods who taught the sacred nations, such as the Egyptians and Assyrians, the whole of their sacred dialect. Wherefore we think that we ought to make our own dialect resemble the speech cognate with the gods. Since also the first mode of speech in antiquity was of such a nature, and especially since they who learnt the first names concerning the gods mingled them with their own tongue, as being suited to such names and conformable to them, and handed them down to us, we therefore keep unchanged the rule of this immemorial tradition to our own times. For of all things that are suited to the gods, the most akin is manifestly that which is eternal and immutable. So this idea that these names are handed down from the gods, right? That we use these names from these old languages because the older languages are closer to the original, the sacred dialect of the gods. And so we say them not so much because of their meaning, but because there's power in the sound of them. There's also a kind of famous line actually from the Chaldean oracles that goes, "Change not the barbarous names, for in all the nations are their names given by the gods, possessing unspeakable power in the mysteries." And also adds that they should not, in fact, be translated. We're doing that here anyway because we need something to talk about. But the Chaldean oracles say not to translate them, which tells me that the meaning of the words is less important than the sound of the words. Saying them in all the spells, you say these things out loud. You make the sounds, and the sounds themselves have the power. It doesn't matter if you know what they mean or not, because it's the sounds that have the power. And I've actually also seen this idea in Eastern religion with mantras, where yeah, the mantras might have a meaning, but you don't say them and repeat them because of the meaning. You say them and repeat them because of the power of the sound and what the sound does to you as you're saying them. So I think Neboutosoualeth is definitely in this category of words that are powerful in and of themselves, regardless of meaning. I will put Actiophanes and Ereshkigal in that same category as well, but by sort of poking at them, we can tease out meaning. And we can do a little bit of that with Neboutosoualeth too, but there is this idea of these barbarous names that not only can't be translated, but shouldn't be, because that's not really the point. Doesn't stop trying, but it's it's not necessary to know what these words mean in order to access their power.
Yeah. And here we are with Actiophanes, Ereshkigal, and Neboutosoualeth, which we were talking a little bit about the idea of these three names being related to the three worlds a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, as we've
And
sort of go on. I was
well,
saying, as we've been talking about them, I've been sort of thinking about how they fit together and how they work together. And in thinking about what Neboutosoualeth might mean, looking at those other two words and sort of the kinds of meaning we tease out of them. And when we talked about Actiophanes, we talked about this idea of the sort of obscured sun, right? The sun behind the clouds and the sun peeping through the clouds and the serpent in the sun, from the cloud lining. So this idea of the obscured sun. And we talk about Ereshkigal, of course, we're talking about hidden places in the underworld. So what we have here is a triplicity. What does that leave us, right? We've got the upper, the lower, we've got the middle, we've got this world, the middle world. And so when we're talking about hidden things, Neboutosoualeth as being things hidden in the middle world. And then if we also sort of bring in this idea of Nebo or Nabu as the god of writing, so we're associating Neboutosoualeth with hidden things of this world and writing, what we get from that is this idea of like occult knowledge, right? Hidden knowledge, hidden writings, secrets of the world, things that are hidden in the world we live in now. And as a formula for doing magic, that feels really satisfying to me. This is completely conjecture for me after diving deep into these three names, but it really feels like they make a triplicity of looking for hidden things in these different realms.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also kind of thinking about the different deities that relate to these names and relate to Hekate, Helios being the titan of the sun, related to Actiophanes, or if you want to look at Selene, maybe either way, shoot a being that shoots out light into the world. Hecate being related to Persephone with Ereshkigal, and then Hecate being related to Hermes with Nebo or Neboutosoualeth. Different,
Yeah. I love that. I love that set of associations as well.
yeah, different ways of looking at it and different connections.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. When it
Definitely.
comes to using this name magically, I think it really is. I think it just kind of sticks with what we've been saying all along for these three, that
Mm.
it's a set. You don't really, I think the only one that I would really like to play around with as a an epithet on its own would be Actiophes. Outside of that, really these three seem like they should be sticking together or be used in context of the PGM. Outside of that, I don't know. I wouldn't, you could try to use Neboutosoualeth in a way of working with Hecate for some mercurial way, but it seems really it's really kind of roundabout and not. I wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like these three names, they work really well together. And,
Hmm.
I've been using these names for years without having much understanding of what they mean. But in the context of, as Barbara's names, I always sort of accepted sort of Iamblichus's interpretation that, this is, these are, the gods understand what I'm saying, and
Yeah.
I don't need to. And they've been effective in that way that I talked about, I think last time, as this sort of almost a password, right? Like the secret names, you say them to show that you are um allied with Hecate,
Hmm.
and sort of announcing your identity, status, and power as a Hecatean witch. And
Hmm.
they seem to work great for that, even if the meaning is obscure.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, cool. There we go. Hey, do you have anything else you want to say about the Soleth?
I don't think so. Like I said at the beginning, this is a tough one because it's so obscure. But it makes for a really looking into it made for a really fun romp through the PGM for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the next one we have lined up is also going to be a fun romp, I think. It's going to be Amabusa, and well, I'll just kind of leave it at that. We're gonna do some digging, and it's going to be a lot of fun. If
Yeah.
you have any questions, or if you want to suggest any epithets, you can always reach out to us via Facebook or Instagram. Find us at the Epithets Podcast, and we'd love to hear from you all. So reach out, and well, until next episode, thanks for listening.